it has to do with whose obligation it is to do the buying. And so if it's an entity purchase buy-sell arrangement, the agreement itself puts the obligation on the business to do the buying in the event of an owner of the company, in the event something happens to one of the owners of the company. Here's what I mean. Let's say that we've got XYZ Corporation, and owner A and owner B are each the 50% owners of XYZ Corporation. And let's say that the value of XYZ Corporation is $2 million. So the question is, if we're going to do an entity purchase or redemption buy-sell arrangement, what does the agreement say? Well, the agreement says, in that example, that in the event something happens to owner A or something happens to owner B, XYZ Corporation is going to do the buying of owner A's interest if something happens to owner A, or owner B's interest if something happens to owner B. That's what the agreement says. And so if we focus on death as the triggering event, what that means is that if owner A dies, XYZ Corporation is going to buy owner A's business interest from owner A's estate. That's the key characteristic. That's what makes a redemption arrangement or entity purchase arrangement a redemption arrangement. So how does life insurance enter the picture? Well, life insurance is the funding vehicle so that XYZ Corporation is able to keep its promise under the buy-sell agreement. So in my example, in a perfect world, if life insurance is used to fund the obligation, XYZ Corporation would be owner and beneficiary of an insurance policy on A's life in the amount of $1 million. And it would also own an insurance policy on owner B's life in the amount of $1 million, also be the beneficiary. If owner A dies, XYZ Corporation, as beneficiary of the life insurance policy, receives $1 million in cash, and under its obligation in the buy-sell agreement, it would be obligated to use that cash to buy out owner A's interest from owner A's heirs. Owner B would then be the owner of all the outstanding issued shares of XYZ Corporation, and that's how the buy-sell arrangement would work. Very straightforward, very common way of setting up a buy-sell arrangement. Well, what if we wanted to do a cross-purchase buy-sell arrangement for the same company? How would we set it up? Owners A and B, XYZ Corporation worth $2 million, A and B are equal owners. The key would be that the buy-sell agreement would be between the owners of the company and wouldn't obligate the business to do the buying, but would obligate, in the event of death, a surviving owner of the company to do the buying. So A would be obligated, if something happens to B, to buy out B's ownership interest from B's heirs at the price that they've agreed, $1 million. And likewise, B would agree to buy out owner A's heirs in the event of owner A's death. In order to help them keep their promises to fund their obligations, A would own insurance on B's life in the amount of $1 million, would also be the beneficiary, and B would own insurance on A's life in the amount of $1 million, and B would also be the beneficiary of the policy on A's life. So if A dies, B, as owner and beneficiary of that policy on A's life, would get $1 million, and the buy-sell agreement would obligate B to use that money to buy out A's ownership interest in the company from A's heirs. And so B ends up owning the company, and everything is copacetic, everything is good to go. The family is cashed out in a fair way, according to the agreement, and B is able to operate the business without having to worry about doing anything extra to treat A's family fairly. So those are the two most common ways in a multi-owner business to set up a buy-sell arrangement. So there are various tax implications of either arrangement, but you know the question really is less about taxes for most businesses and more about which is the easier and more sensible way to do it. And I'm glad to talk to people about those practical concerns and tax concerns in more detail, but we don't have time today. It's possible for business owners to hedge their bets and put together a buy-sell agreement that says we'll decide at the right time whether redemption or cross-purchase is the right method. So we're going to put that off till later. You know, a skilled attorney can certainly draft that kind of an agreement. Well, what about a one-way buy-sell agreement? When does that come up? It comes up when you've got generally a one-owner company. It's a very common thing for us, I think, to run into 100% companies owned by one person. And you know, how do you make buy-sell plans in that event? Well, you make one-way buy-sell plans. You either have a key person be the potential buyer of the business in the event something happens, or you might have a third-party competitor be the potential buyer of the business in the event something happens. You draw up the agreement in advance so that the obligation on the part of the key person or the third-party competitor is made clear. Let's assume it's a key person. And the key person's obligation is one way. The key person's obligation is to do the buying in the event of the owner of the company's death, but there's no obligation in the other direction. The owner of the company doesn't have to buy anything from the key person because the key person is not an owner of the company. Hence the name one-way buy-sell. If I'm the 100% owner of a company and I've got a key person to whom I want to sell the business, I might enter into an agreement with that key person that would spell out the buy-sell price and the buy-sell terms, and I might help the key person buy insurance on my life where the key person is also the beneficiary, so that if in the event something happens to me, the key person has the money to be able to buy out my family in the event something happens to me. So that's the characteristic of a one-way buy-sell agreement. So if we're talking about comprehensive buy-sell planning, I don't know that I've talked about anything yet other than the death time trigger, and that I think is right and proper. This is the most obvious contingency to plan for life insurance professionals. Why? Well, first of all, I think it's the most definite and predictable contingency. Everybody's going to die, and it's not hard to imagine the owner of the business dying and trying to imagine what will happen inside the business. I think the other reason why we lead with it is for the point that I made earlier. You can sell something. You can sell life insurance that provides cash in the event of a death, and it is exactly the right kind of funding vehicle to help facilitate a buyout. The downside of starting with death is, as I pointed out earlier, there's a potential for disconnect with the business owner. So if you're doing, you know, kind of a comprehensive buy-sell conversation, or perhaps reviewing somebody's buy-sell agreement, what other kind of triggers should you look for? What other kinds of triggers can you discuss? Well, I think it makes sense for us to discuss disability. Clearly, if there's one owner of the business, or there are multiple owners of the business who are active in business operations, and one of them becomes permanently and totally disabled and is unable to work, that puts a lot of stress on the business. And it may be fair, if that happens, for the other owners or key employee to buy out the business so that the uncertainty over what to do with the disabled owner is kind of put to the side. That certainly needs to be thought about. What should the trigger say? How should disability be defined? Well, that's a conversation that is appropriate for the business owner and the attorney. It's certainly a conversation that ought to be pursued by the agent if you want to do comprehensive planning. And I think the question of how should the contingency be funded should be raised. Obviously, for those who have access to disability products, disability buyout or disability income insurance to help facilitate a disability buyout ought to be evaluated on the part of the business owners. Divorce ought to be thought about as a trigger for a buy-sell. Divorce? Really? Yeah, no, divorce really should be thought about. If people get divorced, what is it that they fight about? Well, they fight about everything sometimes, unfortunately. But one of the main things that they might fight about is stuff. They might fight about stuff and what it's worth, how to divide it up, and how to turn it into money. And if a divorcing business owner